And we're at the top of the hexagram. We are in gate 61 at the moment, the gate of inner truth, the gate of mystery, and the sixth line is called appeal. In our process of looking at the lines of transition, we've discovered that the nature of the sixth line is that it is looking at the entire circuit. It is looking for the potential fulfillment of the whole circuit before it is ready to make any kind of a commitment. This 61-6 is a mutation of that. It's not quite like any other sixth line. The 61-6 is not only interested in fulfilling the whole individual process, but in having the right direction, being the role model, having the ability to explain their knowing, and the social spirit to be able to share it with others, the penetrating awareness that brings it into the existential now, all for the purpose of convincing and explaining to the collective how it all works. For the 61-6, this is not just a matter of trying to make a commitment to the fulfillment of the individual process, but it is a commitment to go beyond the individual process and be able to actually mutate the collective. So there is an enormous lack of involvement in inner truth by 61-6s. They are rarely getting their inspiration out. Why bother? Unless that inspiration will get all the way through that whole individual process and be able to mutate the collective field. In the exaltation, the profound attunement to the collectivity that can lure the public to a truth. Inspiration that can bring clarity to the collective. They can bring something new to the collective. This is a truly mutative gate. But that knowing that lies here is inspiration, and inspiration is not awareness, remember, it still has to be rationalized. It still has to become an insight, and it still has to be explained. It still has to go through all these processes. If a 61-6 is just sitting there alone and it does not have any all the other attributes, it's just looking out at the individuals that it meets and the process that it goes through and says, oh, I'm not telling them what I know. This is never going to be of any value. This will never be able to mutate the collective. It's really common. The moment that a 61-6 is engaged in inspiring others, you know that they're going to have an impact on the collective, positive or negative. After these 6 lines have gone through their interdependent stage, that third line phase where they get to the point, or when they get to the point where they see that their knowing may never really manifest, or that they begin to be very clear in discriminating between what is a valuable knowing, what is a mutative knowing, and what isn't. That profound attunement allows them to point out to what knowing really is of value. They're the ones who know whether the fifth line has any value or not, whether that influence is justified or not, whether that knowing is practical or not. And because of that, they can lure the public to the truth. You could say that it's not their knowing, it's knowing others' knowings that is their knowing, to know the value of the knowing of others. I'm not sure I knowing what I'm knowing there. Yeah, it's not in what they know themselves, but it's in knowing what others know that is of value. That's, I think, what I was trying to say there. Yes, mutation. Uh, there is a great power in the sixth line and in the role that they have. When the villagers are frightened of the behavioral challenges demanded by the heretic, they climb up the mountain to the fool on the hill or to the sage at the top and they say, look, what do you think of all this? And the six says, well, they know what they're talking about. And that is enough to lure the public to the truth. If, on the other hand, that sixth line is saying, they have got no idea what they're talking about, then the villagers are going to go down the hill and start gathering firewood. So they're very influential. Detriment. A reliance on shop-worn cliches and slogans that may be new in their level of energy, but inevitably fall on deaf ears. The delusion that inspiration can bring clarity to the collective. When you try to get the collective to know something, you have to use many things. If you're a knower, you have to use images, examples, parables, stories, examples. And what happens to you is that you end up getting caught up in trying to use collective language to describe your individual knowing. And then the collective doesn't see it as knowing anymore because it knows kind of what you're talking about because of the language. It recognizes the language, and so it can argue with you. The point in which expression is necessary is a very difficult stage in the individual process because they must be able to use the language of the collective without being collective and not getting caught in that language trap. Most knowers, if you listen to their descriptions of things, you will see that they borrow extensively from both collective ways. The storytelling of the abstract and the reasonable descriptions of the logic. But it will fall on deaf ears if there's nothing new to hear in that. The only time that the individual really gets any recognition is when they are mutative and different and bringing something new to the collective, something the collective has never had access to before. So if you cloud that with too much collective language, it loses its individual impact. Ra said he had first-hand experience of this when he used the terminology of exalted and detriment, because in taking that terminology from astrology, it gave the collective a chance to get lost in the words. It was better from a mutative point of view when he insisted that we had the little triangles that you see either on a chart or in the Rave I Ching to replace the words, because it gave the collective too much of a chance to be prejudiced with the words. You know, the terminology just wasn't new enough. And even though it was being used in a different way, there was still the familiarity. And so they were deaf to the mutation in the message. When we get to this point of appeal, the sixth line understands what knowing can mutate the collective. It can be attractive to the collective. And so we go to the beginning of this process. We go to the 60th gate. The 61 and the 60 are opposite each other in terms of the body graph. Where 61 here, it's at the very first gate at the top in individuality in the head center, whereas the 60 is that very bottom gate there in the root center in individuality. So they're opposite each other in terms of the body graph, but they're beside each other in the wheel, which means they're very similar to each other. Now, in both of these gates lies the potential to mutate. One is the pressure to mutate mentally, and the other is to mutate genetically. They have the same lower trigram construction. The bottom four lines of all of these, of the 60 and the 61, are the same, two yang lines and then two yin lines. So they are part of the same Godhead. They're in the same quarter of the quarter. The 61-6 is waiting for the 24. The 60 is waiting for the 3. Going through the limitation of carrying with it all the possibility to allow mutation to take place. When the 3 comes, the mutation can take place, and in order to bring the mutation into the body, it has to pass through the 3. It goes into the genetics, into the cells, into the DNA. This is where it comes. Difficulty at the beginning for any mutation. This is the third gate. The moment that the 3 is there, then you have the structure of the cell itself. It is not enough that knowing is something that is only mentally mutative. It has to be biologically mutative too. The grounding for this final line in the 61st gate is the 6th line of gate 62, and it's called self-discipline. The 62nd gate opens up the possibility for us to have a common understanding, to express our common understanding using the right level of detail and the right language. So this has got to be helpful to the 61/6 who needs that right language to express its knowing to the collective, with just the right level of difference for them to take notice, but not enough that it scares them away altogether. Mars moves into gate 62 at 16:45. This is our current Earth gate, that logical gate of detail in the throat with the voice, I think. The moon has been in gate 7 since 9:20 this morning. The G center gate, that is a roll gate, is a gate of direction. It's in logic circuitry and is called the gate of the role of the self. At 19:46, it moves into gate 4, the Ajna gate called youthful folly. And there it meets both Saturn and Venus, who are both sitting in gate 63 right now. So we have the channel of logic, a design of mental ease mixed with doubt. This is a projector channel in the logic or understanding circuit. And much like gate 61, we find a constant mental pressure, although here it is to come up with logical answers to the doubts that plague this circuit. And finally, the moon brings us another channel as it moves into gate 29 at 6:19. And it meets the south node, which is in the G center in gate 46. This is the abstract channel of discovery, a design of succeeding where others fail or failing where others succeed, where we can learn that there is actually no such thing as success or failure. There is only the experiential process of continual discovery. Thank you very much for joining me through this 61, magical 61. So we move into gate 60 tomorrow, and gate 60 is the last gate of this quarter. No, it's not the last gate of this quarter. It's the last gate of this cycle, of this solar cycle. Because after 60, we move into 41, and 41 is the start of the new year in human design context. So this is the last gate of the old year, really, as we move into 60 and the gate of limitation and acceptance and more mutation. Of course, it's part of the format channel for the individuality, and it's in the channel of mutation. So I think we kind of know what to expect there. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow for the overview and the first line. And yeah, thank you again for joining me on this journey, which is coming to an end. Really, I have not that many more gates to go through before I have completed a full solar cycle. And wow, what a trip it has been. I will see you soon. Until then, go gently.